But let me just reiterate little things about what Steve was talking about, how this project evolved from the 1991-1992 project. It's been over 25 years since David Praber, a former Tulsa Tribune photographer, started a project that he saw North Tulsa that was in crisis. In 1989, the city of Tulsa decided to go with a different form of government, and that changed from a commission type form of government to a council form of government. So it was designed in order to get more community involvement and also to help the community have more input into the government and the city of Tulsa. David Praber enlisted the help of 25 Tulsa photographers to go out and document what they saw, what they observed in North Tulsa. David felt that, well, maybe this might have some impact on changing the political, social, economic conditions of North Tulsa. So with that, we had almost a year to do this project. We had an exhibition of the photographs in 1992 at the Greenwood Cultural Center. There were over 120 photographs on display at the Oklahoma State University in Tulsa, which is now Oklahoma State University. Back when we did the project, it was called UCAT. Some of you remember UCAT back in those days. Well, did anything change in North Tulsa after the first group of photographs were taken? Well, we never got back to find out. David Praber, at that time, the Tulsa Tribune was probably gone out of business. It ceased to exist. Publication, Tulsa World continued. David Praber left and is now living in Illinois. He's working for a newspaper, and I believe Steve contacted him and let him know that we were continuing with that project. Unfortunately, he was not able to make it. Let me talk a few minutes before I introduce these 5 photographers who are part of this Tulsa, North Tulsa change. The goals of the North Tulsa project were, first of all, to challenge artists to create work that addresses change, if any, in the north side of our community. And also to help form collaborations between artists and create new synergistic ways of making and talking about social justice, art making, and hopefully developing solutions through our art. And to help the general public think and talk about what they feel about this topic and to spur them and consider what economic and political and social options they might want to see happen in North Tulsa. So with that, I'd like to introduce the 5 photographers that are on this panel. We're going to ask questions, and would you hold your questions so after we have finished the questioning of these 5 photographers. We had 13 photographers all together in this project. 5 of them are here. They're good photographers, they're great photographers in my opinion. Now listen, they only had a 1 month and a half to do this. Now remember, 1991, 92, we had a whole year. So we had enough time to really explore North Tulsa. These guys here only had a month or so. And they were put to a test to come up with images that they considered to be what they felt was an opportunity to see what Tulsa looked like, North Tulsa, and how they felt about it. So let me introduce our panel members, starting with my far right. We got Dan Foreman. Raise your hand, Dan. Nathan Harmon, Marie Newcott, Robert Wakely, and Walt Costa. Now, what I'd like for you to do, would you please, beginning with Dan, would you please tell the audience about your career, about yourself?
Sure, thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. We all really appreciate it. I'm originally from Michigan. I'm sort of a newbie here. Well, I've been here for 4 years, but it's kind of flown by a little bit. So I grew up in Michigan. I kind of moved around the country, but I moved here to kind of teach at University of Tulsa photography. Coming to Tulsa, I had sort of like minimal sort of understanding of the town, except for sort of a handful of things, which maybe I'll wait to talk about so we can kind of introduce everyone. Anyways, thank you.
Hey, I'm Nathan Harmon, and I'm a photographer here locally. I've lived here on and off since 1989, so certainly as a teenager I grew up and heard of this place called North Tulsa. I'm originally from North Tulsa. I own and operate Nathan Harmon Photography for the last 19 years, and for the last 6 years I've been teaching at OSU IT, which is down in Oklahoma.
Hey, I'm Robert Blakely, and this on? You guys hear me?
Yes.
I have to first say thank you to Don, Doyle, and Steve. I'm tremendously honored to be a part of this amazing show together. I was born and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Grew up around 41st and Harvard. Went to Edison High School. Majored in photography in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I've been teaching photography at Booker T. Washington High School for over a decade now. Been doing photography as a career pretty seriously for 10, 15 years now. And very honored to be here and among some great, amazing people.
Hi, my name is Maureen Tatiana. I'm originally from Nairobi, Kenya. I'm new to Tulsa. This is my second year, and I came to grad school in Tulsa. And like my colleagues, I take photography as a way to just capture stories. I'm really a professional photographer, so it was really an honor to be part of this and be able to tell the story of Tulsa. I'm a grad student, and I'm an ex-forensic scientist.
Hi, I'm Walt Costi, and I am an Okie in the best sense of that word. I worked as an artist in the community 30 years, something like that. I'm showing my age. Right now I work with poetry and photography to express myself, and I'm tremendously interested in place, and specifically the place of Tulsa. So I feel very honored to be next to Mr. Thompson, who's worked in this community for a very long time. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you guys for your, what I want to do is just to start asking some questions of the panel members. We're going to have a little few minutes just to ask the questions, but as far as your thoughts on what you have seen and what you thought about this project. First question I'd like to ask, and this can go right down with panel members. Before beginning this project, did you have any preconceived ideas about North Tulsa? Were they negative or positive? Or were they both? Yeah, let's start with you.
So I mentioned I moved here most recently from Missouri, and I grew up in Michigan. So coming to Tulsa, I didn't have an extensive background in North Tulsa in particular. But coming here, I guess my experiences that I did have with the city had to do with like Larry Clark's book, Tulsa, which is sort of, I guess, at the lower end of North Tulsa, the south side of it. Also The Outsiders and S.E. Hinton's books and the movies, of course. So I had some experience with those coming here, so I had some sense of like a cultural history and a creative history here. Which coming here to photograph, I think one of the things that really kind of stuck out is my knowledge from those things, which, say, The Outsiders is a lot of people's favorite book growing up, and the movie is one of my favorite movies growing up. I think sort of the experience that's depicted at that time period in that place was very accurate to today. So in terms of having like a positive or negative sort of reaction to that, it's maybe more of an empathy in terms of experience, in terms of economic level and living conditions. I guess the other variable is it's quite similar to actually where I grew up in Michigan. I grew up near Flint, Michigan, an auto town called Saginaw. I photographed in Detroit for several years prior to moving here, and still. So my experiences there are actually quite similar to what I've noticed here. So there's some background in terms of that kind of experience where it seems to be sort of representative of larger, like, systemic problems nationally, and North Tulsa seems like a microcosm of that.
So this is kind of an interesting question because since I've lived here since '89, I have grown up in the Tulsa area. So I certainly, as a teenager, every time you turned on the news, there was something happened in North Tulsa, whether a robbery or a shooting or something like that. As an adult, as a photographer, I'm seeing this as this is a community that's necessary to this city. That perhaps is underserved. I have a number of friends that live throughout North Tulsa, and so part of my approach to this project was to kind of go in areas that I was not necessarily familiar with. By the way, we had an interesting boundary. So that was Harvard to Gilcrease, from Archer to 56th Street North.
Right, it's a-
Yeah. So within those boundaries, that was kind of our North Tulsa district, and it was kind of my mission in our short time period to explore pretty much up and down these streets and then find the area that I chose to point my camera at.
So, growing up as a Caucasian male in central Tulsa, my first and earliest memories of North Tulsa, or the north side as we call it, because hearing North Tulsa sounds like a different city to me, and I don't wonder if it's become that way more so over time, but it was just, you know, kind of the north side, if you will. But my first and earliest memories are from athletic events, playing for Edison, and we'd have to get on the bus and go out north and get our butts whooped in soccer and basketball and wrestling and everything else, you know, football and whatnot, by Booker T and McLean, you know, and whatnot. You know, but I was never really raised to fear the north side. I had friends, you know, living 56th Street North, I came right home from soccer and football and stuff like that. But, you know, it was, for many of us going to schools like Edison, Memorial, and Bishop Kelly, it was not as frequented because of the lack of businesses. So there always was this great unknown about that side of town. You know, so approaching this, I've had to examine my own kind of upbringing a lot and how my perspective of having taught at Booker T, you know, playing against Booker T with the T Connection, the band and stuff like that from as long back as I can remember. You know, I think that everyone in Tulsa has a different take on what the north side is to them, not just from what neighborhood you lived in, but how you interacted with all of Tulsa. You know, whether you see it as a dividing line on 244 or downtown, or, you know, as one big city that struggles like the rest of America, you know. So those are some of my oldest memories, but I have to say that from working at Booker T for the last over a decade, I think any distinction between North and South Tulsa for me has kind of eroded. I see those, you know, in economic development, and you know, there's a marked difference. But you know, as far as a personal process of differentiating the two sides of town, I think, you know, for me that's a little bit different than most. But yeah.
As I said, I'm new to Tulsa, and my school, I think, would be considered to be in East Tulsa border. It's like all the way, not anywhere close to North Tulsa. And I remember I'm an adventurer, and I've lived in different places. And so every time I move to a new city, I like to just feel my way through the city, just to see what the city has to offer. And it was during one of my adventures that somebody mentioned the color line. And I was like, what is that? And actually it was a she and a he. But like, oh yeah, the color line is this unofficial boundary that kind of separates white Tulsa from black Tulsa. And I was like, okay, so is there like a line on the ground? Can I map, you know, something? And they're like, no, if you live in Tulsa, you actually know where it is. And to me, that was the thing that actually sparked my interest. What is this color line? And is it something that if I was to like move through space, could I actually be able to distinguish it? And so coming into this project, I came in almost allowing myself to be a blank slate. So I did hear a lot about North Tulsa. North Tulsa is the place where, oh, don't buy a house because they'll go deliver pizza, which was the first time I'd actually heard anything like that. And so I was very curious. And so the first few times before I took pictures, I just drove through like the streets. And then the next time I came, I packed my car and I just walked just up and down the streets, you know, just to kind of like get a feel. And one of the things that I wanted to share was, I do remember one time I was walking and there was a crossroad, and now for the life of me, I lost my first set of pictures, but I actually had a picture of the crossroads. I do know that there is a broken down shopping cart there, but when I went to the other side, one thing that I noticed was the birds chirping on that side. So I was like, huh, that's interesting. So I walked all the way back to the other side, and it was silent. The birds didn't even chirp on that side. And I was like, this is interesting. And so for me, I was able to feel like the difference. It's something almost ethereal. And it's the feeling of, I can say, it's this feeling of like silence, but there's like a rumbling underneath it. It's almost like gears that are slowly starting to come back to life. But there's a lot of like, if something has been stagnant for so long, there's a lot of like dust and this just deep silence to it. But somewhere, if you like sit and just listen, somewhere in that silence, there's gears turning. There's almost like life coming. There's that breath, you know, before you take that first breath, and then you take the breath. And that is what I experienced in North Tulsa.
So my wife and I live in North Tulsa. We've lived in North Tulsa for about 25 years. It's very difficult for me to distinguish North Tulsa from South Tulsa, from East Tulsa, from West Tulsa, because for me, it is all Tulsa. In that sense, I probably have a more difficult time relating to South Tulsa than I do North Tulsa, East or West, simply because when you inhabit the city, what you locate, I believe, the heart of the city for me is the downtown. And I've been shooting photographs since about 2010, and my method for shooting is a little bit different. I don't get out of my car. I shoot from the window of my car because it gives me mobility. So I kind of imagine myself, back in the old days, I used to have horses. Well, I have a car, and I'm able to shoot from my car. I stop most of the time, and I'm shooting. But it gives me that flexibility to move in time very rapidly. So back to the heart of Tulsa being the downtown, I feel like if you're going to say North Tulsa, it would be the soul of the city is in North Tulsa. Because if you look back in our history, some of the events that created this city are right there in that pocket. When the train tracks came through, when the race massacre happened a few years ago, the civil rights movement was birthed at a barbershop just off of Pine. So I think from my perspective, I didn't come to it with any preconception of it being bad or good. It just was. And through this process, I was able to learn a bit more about what is called North Tulsa.
Very good. My second question I'm going to ask the panel, and starting again with Dan coming down the line. Do you believe photographs can impact change in the local community, get the community involved in social change, and how?
I absolutely do. I mean, it's one of the primary reasons I work with the photographic media. Is sort of the tangibility of the photographic image to convey experience to people and show, there's certainly different styles of shooting, but always in the way I shoot very descriptive, more intimate sort of situations that people can find relatable beyond background. In particular, most of the work I've been doing, at least the last several years, is portrait-based, which for sort of the sort of genre that the show is about, at least for me, it feels sort of like where I fit in best, and sort of like I see as like one of the sort of the powerful sources to again sort of convey that idea of one person's experience to someone who may have not had that experience before. And part of it comes through the process of creating that image. I, not exclusively, but I primarily use a large format film camera, which is like slow and bulky to use, but it's like a good conversation piece. And it's because it's slow to use, it allows for conversations to happen with the person I'm photographing, so they can learn more about me and I can learn more about them. So there is sort of like a collaboration that happens in that moment. And there's some agency that's given to the person in the picture, where they have at least sort of a collaborative control in terms of how they're being depicted. I guess sort of a second sort of tier to that is thinking about the arts in general, and in my case, photography, thinking about programming that can be done in the community, and sort of like the power that that can have for people who live in this case, North Tulsa. The way, sort of generally the way I sort of think about North Tulsa as an area is actually quite broader as well. So the university I teach at TU is in Kendall Whittier. So in many ways I consider that sort of an extension of that area. Also out east, like Memorial and Sheridan, also out west, places that are dealing with similar economic challenges. So anyways, I've been doing some volunteer work at Kendall Whittier Elementary School with our photo club at TU, where we've been working with the children to help them learn how to use kind of basic digital cameras, so they have some sense of the potential what the photographic image could do, so they can describe their own experience. That's another tangible thing that could be done, I think, here to help sort of convey experience from the first person perspective.
Well, I think that the power of a photo, it doesn't have like a beginning or an end. It can evoke change. Now, it's not just going to be one photograph that can do this. Projects like this, I think, need to happen probably more often than 15 years.
I agree.
Just certainly to give a voice or a vision to a community. I think that having the images, like I said, growing up, turning on the news, you have something happen in North Tulsa. Well, what if that's just down the street from you? Well, that's what the photograph can do. The photograph can take you to the region, to the area. So for me, traveling up and down these streets, I wanted to find areas that I found interesting, and I personally pick and chose what I wanted to show in its own light. But if you don't have a vision, or you don't have a source or resource to see what's happening, especially in today's visual society, then you really are limiting not just the community, whether they be in North Tulsa or South Tulsa, but you're basically upholding sort of that division, or say color line. Certainly, when I was going through this project, I said, well, what do I do? I'm a beauty maker. I make a living making things look quite a bit better than they actually are. I'm a commercial photographer, so I make pretty pictures of people, and I photograph houses and make them look pretty, pretty glamorous. And so part of my process here is saying, well, so what do I want to show and how do I want to show it? I want to show the people, because that, in my opinion, is the most important and critical part of North Tulsa, is the people of North Tulsa. It's not the buildings, okay? You know, there are families that live, they grow up there and die there, and they have a community. And so that was very critical, that I needed to have some people. I also needed to show some architecture, because that's my background. So I had to have some of that as well. I don't have any in this particular show here, but at the OSU show I do. And getting a little distracted here, where we're going. Can these photographs make a change? Absolutely. I think it's we're gonna have to be more involved. I think it's gonna have to tear down these so-called color line or divisions. The one thing that I did notice when I was talking to folks up in North Tulsa is that we came up with, there's multiple dividing lines. It's just not in North Tulsa, South Tulsa. There's West Tulsa, and there's East Tulsa. And we kind of discussed these boundaries. It's kind of an interesting thing to go through. But I don't want to grandstand this. I'll let you answer.
I must say I was stunned by the quality and depth of the questions that were posed to us for this, and I really greatly appreciate that. I think this is a question that a lot of our careers gravitate around. Can an image end a war? Can an image affect culture? When we talk about this in my classes at Booker T, I ask my students, what was it that ended things like World War II? What was it that ended things like Korean and Vietnam War? And some of them get a foolhardy laugh from me when they say politicians, or the death toll, or the bigger the bombs and all that. And I point to images, like Iwo Jima, and others that show human resilience in our darkest hour. Images from, our personal history like 9/11, through everything that has happened in America in the last couple of years, and the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think that as this generation realizes that with this tool, the cell phone in their hands, digital natives are understanding that as they are not just content consumers, as most Americans were in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, but content creators. You really never know when the next groundbreaking image that changes culture is going to come from. And that puts a greater power in each of our hands. I think that in many ways, Americans have never felt more powerless and helpless against the 1% or the tides have changed. But that being said, we all have an amazing opportunity with 14 megapixels in our hand pretty much every day. So can an image change culture? Absolutely. The role of media has changed to whereas we may not have as much shock and awe as an image like the person in Tiananmen Square might have carried for weeks in the media. But we each have it in our own hands to spread the word of what's going on in our neighborhoods for potentially the very first time in American history and world history. And can a show like this bring those questions to fore? Absolutely. And that's partially why I'm as honored as I am to be here. I think these force us and give us a vessel to look back on Tulsa, from the early 90s to today. Who I was in reference to the North Side and all that, what that means versus today. And I think that we've all grown around downtown Tulsa, as a heart. And I have to agree with Mr. Costa. I believe it is the soul of Tulsa that abides in the north. So I don't want to stray too much either, but yes, an image can and must, in our hands, in our abilities, change culture.
I'm gonna skip the question because it kind of said it.
I'll take her space. Hey, so I have to believe that photography or art can affect change. Otherwise, I would not do it. It's not worth my time to not believe that I can touch your heart, your spirit. And how I do that, maybe you walk past the photograph, you don't see what I see, maybe you do. But, just a couple of quick points. So, the word fake media is out there a lot. I was interviewed by Channel 2 about this exhibit, and what I asked them to do was not interview me, but start going to North Tulsa and start talking to the people there about the positive things that are occurring. So I told you that I shot outside of my car. Well, one thing this exhibit has done, I've gotten outside of my car and I've started talking to people. And that's different. And that change comes through me connecting with you, you connecting with someone else. That's how that change really occurs.
Just to continue with what was talking about as far as the news media, I have always observed something about our Tulsa news media, and I'm going to get some questions later. But let me just make this observation. The news media in Tulsa, to me, has been a little bit lax in really observing North Tulsa in a sense. If you look at, I'm not going to call out the channel and television station 260 anyway. All right. Now, since I got that out of the way, I just wanted to make an observation that sometimes the news media does not look for the positive things that are in North Tulsa. There are a heck of a lot of positive things going on, but you don't see that on the news. What they focus on is some of the negative things that you see in the newspaper. Some murder, some robbery, something that's going on in North Tulsa that is news gathering. This is something what they look for. They look for something that is, they can grab your attention. A child receiving a scholarship is not news to them. And I am very critical of our news media in this city. I am really critical of that because they have really fostered a negative viewpoint of North Tulsa. Several years ago, there's a lady that told me that she moved to Tulsa and she got a hold of a real estate agent and wanted to find a house. They didn't show her North Tulsa at all. Somewhere south. And the real estate agent, and she asked the real estate agent why. She said, well, you don't want to live there. There's some bad things happening in that part of the city. So I just wanted to bring that up. Walt started it off. He got me started on this. But anyway, that's something that I just wanted to say and bring some observation of. And some of the news media is not very critical. Let me just say that. I'm not criticizing the news media, but I think they need to make a little bit more positive steps in trying to tell the story. Not only balance the news, balance that news. Oh, right, we have problems in North Tulsa. We have problems in South Tulsa. We have problems in East Tulsa and West Tulsa. Make the news balanced. Observe what's going on. Tell the truth. Tell the negative, but also tell the positive. Make it balanced. If we have that balanced news coming from our news media, I think things will change. Your perception of North Tulsa will change. A lot of you sitting in this audience have never been to some places in North Tulsa because sometimes there is a fear that's going on. And you have been told that don't go east of Avenue because bad things are happening there. Drugs, prostitution, killers, and all that, so you don't want to venture out. These 5 photographers ventured out. They observed what was going on. And they had and I believe, they came back with a different point of view. Walt has lived in this community for over 25 years. He saw some things that he had never seen before. So, let me just get off my soapbox here. What I'm just trying to say is that the news media needs to have a more positive, more balanced news account of what North Tulsa is all about. There's some heck of a lot of good things going on in that city, in that part of the city. Okay, going to our next question, and I want to talk about, do you believe that photographs, what are some of the positive changes that you observed on your journey through North Tulsa? What are some of the positive changes that you observed?
I don't have the length of time that some of the other folks in the room have in terms of observing changes. But the areas around downtown, of course, have rapidly changed since I've arrived, just in the last 4 years. All the new businesses that have come in and new construction that's happening. In some ways, I view that as sort of a double-edged sword, because it also poses the potential for sort of the ramifications of gentrification and really expensive, say, condos that are being built and that kind of thing. So there's sort of a double-edged sword there. That'd be interesting to see how that plays out, and hopefully advise well, so it's not displacing people from existing communities. One of the other things that I noticed that I thought was interesting, which actually may have been here for a while, but the Job Corps, that's up in North Tulsa, and meeting, I photograph mostly teens and young adults for the portrait work I do. And I met several people who were working through Job Corps and the opportunities that they were being given to have a safe place to live, have mentorship, employment, earning money, getting their feet on the ground so they can enter into adulthood in good standing. I thought was exciting to see. It's the last thing I want to mention. One of our graduates from TU, he's a printmaking student, Cleo Harris, is doing really exciting things. He started a t-shirt company where he's out pretty much daily, out by Booker T, kind of near Booker T actually, where it's the premise of the t-shirt company. His first shirt that he made was "Kill Racism, Not Me." He's also made like a hands up, don't shoot kind of shirts, shirts that are sort of eye-catching, right, but also have like a social message to them. And he's documenting his experience on Instagram and on Facebook, and has been really active in the community, which has been really exciting to see from Cleo. I don't know if anyone knows him, but really awesome guy.
So to address the positive changes, certainly you're seeing new development happening, coming from what I'm going to call the heart of the city, which would be our downtown. Certainly, since the Guthrie Green has taken place, and OSU Tulsa has been doing some work as well, you're seeing more, I don't know, development or a little bit of pride within neighborhoods. And I think that just my observation is that has to start in somebody's house. And so if things are going to get better, they start in your house and hopefully go from one house to the next house, down the block, block to block, hood to hood. Certainly there's, we could say that, well, certain neighborhoods that didn't work out so much, but give it time. Once again, I think a city like Tulsa needs North Tulsa. You can't just say, hey, that's not part of our city.
In terms of positive changes that I've seen, I'm very happy that Texas Tulsa Tech has made an investment in the campus in the heart of Northside. I think that's a positive change. It begs me to answer or question how many institutions of higher learning are there in South Tulsa versus North Tulsa there. But it's a change, There's a Walgreens, there's a Quick Trip. Once again, how many retail stores of that nature are there in North Tulsa versus South Tulsa? But it's a change, and I think those are keystones towards economic development, which is really going to have a key impact. With my bit of time, though, I'd like to be as specific as I could as possible. Like I said, growing up as a Caucasian white guy in Central Tulsa, 41st and Harvard, I always experienced the animosity of going out to the north side to play sports and whatnot. And my story for this is Booker T's homecoming this last year. If you've ever been to a Booker T homecoming, hi Mac. I worked the ticket gate, so I got to take tickets at the south entrance, and that's not just an African-American event. To see all the white and like every race of people pouring in the gates, you know, just happy to be there, happy to be communal and everything like that. For me, just seeing how racially integrated that as a function was made me really happy as I think back on that in terms of this question. So that's a marked change about how many people were coming to that event on the north side of town to come together, you know, and on our shared history. So, yeah.
I think for me the positive thing that I saw was it wasn't as bad as I heard. I was by myself, you know, not really from the area, and I was a little bit apprehensive the first few times, but people are actually very friendly, and it really wasn't as bad as I expected. And I know one of the pictures that I actually took was of this house that had been abandoned for almost 25 years, and on my last trip there, the house has actually been demolished. So that just shows and goes to show that there is progress that's happening. You know, it might be slow, but it's surely coming along. So I don't really have a lot to compare with, but there was a lot of construction, you know, a lot of demolition that was happening. So I'm thinking if they're demolishing and there are all these trucks, that means there's building that's coming, so.
Not always.
Okay, what I'm going to do, I've got two more questions, but I'm going to ask the panel to hold your time, down to about maybe a minute or so. First question is, do you believe this project breaks down barriers, fear, bigotry, prejudice, which separates North Tulsa from the city? So hold your question, hold your answer down for about a minute and a half, please.
Sure. The way I view this, and really the way I view art and photography, is that it opens a conversation. So it's not necessarily providing like the solution, right, to the problem. It's a way to try and reach people. It really sort of the change that's going to happen is when people leave the room, and hopefully sort of continuation of projects that people up here are working on. But you're trying to connect with people, and then people we connect with to then go out and continue the mission of trying to change things.
Well, I think that I hope it helps shed some light in an underserved area. And if that's what the mission is, and if that can help say that this is a view into North Tulsa, then that can be just a little touch of change. And if that's all we get, that's a start, and then you can add to it.
I would just take a moment to look around and appreciate the beauty on the walls, and say that here we are right at the heart of it, and I would hope that that causes change. I know that one of the first things we talk about in my classroom, as I've been forced to look at the difference between North and South Tulsa, is challenging my students to visually compare those two sides of town versus East Tulsa versus West Tulsa, and how people coming into those questions understand how we're really one culture struggling together. You know, it's not a different thing. So I would definitely hope so.
For me, I would definitely say yes, because pictures are very confrontational, and so pictures are, this is the reality unchanged. So I do feel like it does help break barriers, but really showing people who are maybe afraid to step out of their comfort zone to go to these places, to be able to bring it before them, like this is the reality. You know, you cannot continue ignoring it anymore. And also just looking at this table, the diversity of this, the artists themselves. You know, we were going there to record a story, but not only were we using photography as a medium, we became the medium for change. And of breaking down that barrier, you know, because you're seeing, I'm not from Tulsa, you know, I'm not even from America, you know, but I'm here to like help capture the story. So even if maybe they don't know how to start breaking down the barriers, we as artists can be the examples for how to break those barriers by just showing up, going and having this difficult conversations with ourselves, undertaking such projects and bringing them to the public and telling the public it's not as bad as you think it is. We did it. We walked into these places, we captured this story, so here it is, face it.
Yes, I believe it takes a step, and I hope you will take a second step and a third step by encouraging your friends to come and look at the work and engage with it.
Panel, thank you so much. We're going to ask the audience if they have any questions or comments. Anybody have a question or a comment that they would like to make? Yes, sir.
As a Caucasian woman that teaches at Edison and lives in that neighborhood, I find that I was very frightened to go to North Tulsa at first. And I took my son there as a young boy to deliver meals on Thanksgiving. And then when he grew his community garden, and the people in the neighborhood of Booker T would wait with me, on nights I was there watering alone and acted like they were very protective of me as a person and accepted me as an outsider, as an insider. It totally changed my viewpoint that I've heard from so many white people in South Tulsa. Well, don't go there, you will get, hurt. And so I do not have fear that I didn't grow up, I grew up in Illinois, that don't have the fear. And I think that more people need to, like Pam said, get out and get in there. Come in my neighborhood, come in every neighborhood.
Thank you. I am really excited about this project. I was raised in the South. I was raised in Columbia, South Carolina. And having spent time in Tulsa, it amazes me of how segregated and separate the city is. And it's not so much in color as it is in mindset. And I believe what needs to happen is that we as a people need to be very involved in every phase of the city, whether it's culture and the arts, whether it's government, whether it is health. If we are all involved, then we will have one city. And that is what the city of Tulsa is moving towards. And I've been here about 20 years, and I can truly say, from the moment I moved here until now, I can see a change in mindset. And when your mind changes, then the activities of your involvement changes, and I can see that happening in Tulsa. And I'm thankful to Living Arts and Steve Liggett for making this happen again.
Questions? Okay, you're gonna have to come up here.
So this is a question, worked in social sciences and things Tulsa a long time, 40 years. But the good news, I think, for Tulsa is becoming a much more diverse city. It's not necessarily acknowledged. We're Hispanic, we're Hmong population. And so the African American history is now can be blended in a larger context. So I think photography with my question is basically social media and the sociological principle that the future lies in the younger generation. So whether it's Instagram, Snapchat, whatever people want to use, how could we use social media, images, etc., as a conversation to move social change?
So the realism of photography provides an almost unchanged evidence of the reality. And so with social media, people can actually give a snapshot of their reality where they are. So it will become harder to be able to deny, okay, that doesn't happen, or even hide. Like we said, there is progress happening. There's things that are changing. There are people who have from other communities coming in and making gardens. So by using social media, we can be able to put this information out there. And so, as somebody else in the panel said, it takes a lot of pictures to be able to bring the mindset, the change in mindsets. So each and every person can share their reality. And what happens is, as humans, we begin to see that our experiences are actually not that much different from each other. You know, we begin to see the humanity of each other. We begin to see the commonness, and that's what social media does. It brings like places, geographical places that are separated, just together into one place where everybody realizes like, oh, okay, cool. So they're just like us. You know, they're not very much different than we are.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you for this panel. My question concerning social media was, since we have such a large diaspora of information coming to us, how do you all think that we can focus social media to bring up the problems? Because there's so much information that gets filtered on our timelines every single day. So in what ways do you all think that we could focus that information to get it to the right people so they can see the positive things that are happening in North Tulsa?
Step away from the computer. I mean, absorb it and then step away from it and interact.
I would also say that I think that that is happening naturally. For about 15 and some odd years, we had a backlash against Photoshop and other edited softwares for robbing photography of its origins of authenticity and truth. And now that a mass culture is realizing that there's a vessel for truth and reportage in their own hands, I think that it's kind of taken that medium back in terms of being able to, just portray truth and authenticity, which it really has been for a large part of history.
Robert, that perception of truth can differ. That perception of truth can differ because this, to some people, would be one thing and it means another. So the man reaches towards the window. What does that mean? Yep. And there are different opinions about what that means in our community. And we can banter back and forth on social media, but that doesn't change anything because what happens is we just keep collapsing against each other. We have to communicate apart from the media. But a good question.
You got to continue the dialogue. I think that's the number one thing, especially with any of your representatives in your local government. If you see something, for example, if it is documented in photos or video, then make sure that you get that in the hands of your government, your local government official, or possibly police, community leaders, and at that point in time, you can kind of circle your wagons to hopefully evoke some sort of change.
The internet offers their benefits and cons, of course, but I think one of the powers of social media that can happen with the photographic medium is the ease to disseminate things quickly. So when the circumstances are happening, I think Devin Allen as a photographer is a good example. He was someone who is considered sort of like a quote-unquote like citizen photographer who was photographing during the Baltimore situation a couple of years ago. Someone who wasn't necessarily a professor or a journalist or someone of that nature, but someone who was actually involved in the process of what was happening and gave a very compelling first-person perspective from someone who was relatively unknown prior to that. I think that's one of the powers of what social media can do. As an artist and thinking about social media, I think it's important to think about social media as a venue just like you would as a gallery. There are limitations to working with actual gallery spaces. They're great. I exhibit in galleries. I'm fine here, of course. But it is speaking to like a fairly specific audience. If you're exhibiting within sort of the white cube of what the gallery is. And social media has the potential, if handled in a conceptual manner and in an interesting manner, to really tap into audiences that might not casually come to venues like this.
Ladies and gentlemen, it was a pleasure being here tonight. And I'd like to thank these 5 photographers for being here tonight. Robert Blakely, Nathan Harmon, Dan Foreman, Maureen Utah, thank you so much. It's been a great panel. And I hope everyone got a little from this, got something that they could, muddle over and think about. And I think these photographers did a great job, and I do appreciate them being here. Thank you so much.
Another step. We are going to have a talk by our curator of Wire 3. We welcome you to come in there.
I know, she said that. Like, you have to spend all day with this camera. Right. There's never Yes, I will as soon as I can. Just can't get enough. You guys. Very